On March 6, 1981, the sexual assault and murder of her daughter would cause Marianne Bachmeier to take justice into her own hands. Rather than let the court system decide the fate of her daughter's killer, she brought a gun to trial and shot the man dead herself. In the end, this case would divide Germany, with many stating they would have done the same. These events all started on May 5th of 1980 when 7-year-old Anna Bachmeier got into an argument with her mother. The young girl wanted to visit a friend that morning, so she ended up skipping school. From this point, she would leave the house, pretending to go to class. However, a nearby neighbor of hers by the name of Klaus Grabowski would lure her into his house by promising she could play with his cats. Unfortunately for the young girl, her fate was sealed once she entered his house. Unbeknownst to Anna, Klaus had been arrested years prior to that moment. In 1973, he had assaulted a 6-year-old girl. Luckily, the girl was able to escape from his grasp. Klaus would chase her down, grab her from behind, and attempt to strangle her. The 6-year-old girl would then scream as loud as she could, which startled him. He would then let her go and then be charged with attempted murder. For this offense, he was given probation. 2 years after this, he would once again assault 2 young girls. Klaus would be charged with the abuse and would be given a psychological evaluation, which would read as follows. On the basis of the convincing opinion of Dr. Hartmanis, the board is undoubtedly certain that the abnormal sexual instinct of the accused is addictive. The accused was aware of the unauthorized activity, but he was considerably limited in his ability to prevent it because of his addiction to the offense. After this, Klaus would be sent to a psychological treatment facility. It was here he would be chemically castrated. He was given a choice in this matter. If he agreed to this, he would be released, which he did and was. Unfortunately, there were no checkups or follow-up treatments. Only 2 years later, he would appeal to the court system to begin hormone treatments. In his appeal, he would state that the chemical castration came with side effects. It is unknown what the supposed side effects were. He would further state that he wished to start a family with his fiancée, and the chemicals rendered him unable to do so. Unfortunately, the courts would approve his appeal. In early 1980, Klaus would be injected with a drug to reverse the effects of the chemical castration. This was done under the agreement that he was receiving psychiatric treatment, which he lied about. Now, with Anna in his home, he would divulge in his sick, twisted fantasies which had been suppressed for years. That young girl would be assaulted for hours. The true terror she went through would only be known to her and her assaulter. After Klaus was satisfied, he would use his skills as a butcher to tie up, then strangle her with a pair of tights. Later that night, his fiancée would arrive home and Klaus would confess to everything. This would result in her leaving the home and heading straight to the police. However, Klaus would waste no time in disposing of Anna's body. She would then be placed inside a cardboard box and loaded onto Klaus's bicycle. From this point, he would pedal to a nearby canal, burying her body into the banks of the water. Police would soon arrive to his house, where they would find a note he had written to his fiancée. In the note, he would beg her not to go to the police and would state that he would meet her at a local bar. The police would immediately head to the bar and he would be arrested. During questioning, Klaus would pin all the blame on the young girl. He would state that Anna, a 7-year-old girl, was attempting to extort him. He would further claim that Anna told him that she would report him for assault if Klaus did not give her money. According to Klaus, this scared him as it would ruin his life, so he killed her. However, Once the body was discovered, it was clear that the murder was done out of enjoyment. Anna would be found hogtied in the cardboard box by the canal. Her mother, Marianne Bachmeier, would be informed of her daughter's death. Marianne would refuse to speak to the police, nor would she visit her daughter at the morgue. On the surface, it appeared that Marianne did not care about the murder of Anna. However, this couldn't be further from the truth. The death of her daughter was devastating. Marianne had already lived a hard life. Her mother suffered from mental illness, her alcoholic father had deserted the family, and her stepfather was physically and emotionally abusive. The years that followed would be riddled with more abuse. At 22, she would fall pregnant with Anna. The father would soon abandon them both, to which Marianne was forced to be a single mother. But now, her daughter was gone. Marianne blamed herself. Soon, Anna's funeral would take place. Marianne would arrange for a Pink Floyd song to play during the ceremony. Following that, her mental health would decline, with her having breakdowns in public or locking herself in her apartment. In the months that followed, she would attend the trials of Klaus, sitting in the front row so she could face him. Furthermore, she would yell things out during court, such as referring to Klaus as a pig. During trial, Klaus would describe Anna's death, stating, "I heard something come out of her nose. I was fixated. Then I could not stand the sight of her body any longer." Later on, it would be discovered that the urologist who had helped reverse the chemical castration had not followed proper procedure. He had failed in checking if Klaus had a criminal history. On day 3 of the trial, Marianne would enter the courtroom and take a spot near Klaus. Only seconds later, she would reach into her purse and remove a .22 caliber Beretta. Marianne would then aim the gun at Klaus and fire it 8 times. 7 of these bullets would enter his back, ripping through his vital organs. Klaus would then slump forward in his seat, fall out of his chair, and die on the ground before medical attention could arrive. Marianne would then surrender to a nearby police officer stating, "I wanted to shoot him in the face. Unfortunately, I hit him in the back. I hope he's dead." This would become one of the most controversial cases in Germany, with Marianne being known as the Revenge Mother. Many parents would state that they completely understood her reasons for killing Klaus, with others saying they would have done worse. One letter to her would read, "To you from a grandfather who would have done the same thing. You are not alone." Over 100,000 German marks would be donated to her by the week's end to help with her legal fees. Along with this, her face was plastered on the front page of every newspaper. Even though the majority of the public was on her side, the court system was faced with a tough decision. In order to prevent similar events, Marianne would need to be prosecuted. Soon, she would be arrested. Over the course of the next 15 months, she would attempt to take her own life 5 times. Because of this, she would be taken out and evaluated by psychologists. However, she would refuse to cooperate with them. An investigation would ensue. During this time, it would be found that she had planned the murder by purchasing the gun and practicing at a local target range. Marianne herself admitted that she had bought the Beretta and kept it at her daughter's grave. She would further state that she had only purchased it for self-defense as she felt unsafe after the murder of her daughter. Despite witnesses seeing her at the target range, Marianne would deny practicing with the weapon. Her defense would argue this was not premeditated and was something done in the spur of the moment. According to her, she thought Klaus would tell more lies about her daughter, which is what caused her to end his life. On November 2nd, 1982, she would be charged with the murder of Klaus. Her trial would last 25 days, and during this time, she would become somewhat of a celebrity. Oddly enough, it would seem that she would bask in the newfound fame, posing for the cameras and enjoying the spotlight. This was off-putting to many people. At the end of her trial, the courts would drop the murder charges and convict her of manslaughter as well as unlawful possession of a firearm. Marianne would be sentenced to 6 years in prison. This outcome would divide the public, with some thinking the punishment was too harsh and others thinking it was too light. In a later interview, Marianne would state, "I can't imagine that I would have shot this person if he had turned around and said that he was sorry about what he had done." Along with this, she would sell her story to a German magazine for 250 marks. In the United States, this would be a little over $140,000. Marianne would move to Nigeria with her new husband, but the two would divorce in 1990. Only 6 years later, she would pass away from pancreatic cancer.